Hey everyone, welcome to the Otherz podcast. I am your host, Stephen Penny, back after quite a long hiatus of pretty much the whole summer. But when I come back with a bang and a very special guest this week. A lot of people out there have been asking to get this guy on the podcast for quite some time. So those people can stop asking because he is here at last. He is a Philly native, a skateboarder, a super dad, a Beanie Siegel aficionado, a clothing and footwear designer, a part-time model. He's everything, all of the above and much more. Jimmy Gorecki, how you doing, man?
I'm good. Thank you so much. That was a very kind introduction. I appreciate it.
Everyone I speak to that knows you only has great words to say about you.
That's awesome. That's always a pleasant thing to hear.
Yeah, and we over the kind of last couple of years, we've had a lot of people mention about trying to get you on the podcast to come on and chat about the IceCreams skate team and stuff like that. So we're going to get to all that good stuff in a moment. So I reckon we jump straight into it and let's make this about you, I guess. So if we go like right back to the beginning, as I just mentioned, you're from Philadelphia originally.
Yep. Yeah.
So let's just go back to the basics. What like got you into skateboarding and how old were you and all that kind of stuff?
I was pretty man. My earliest recollection of like being interested in skating was probably 5 or 6 years old. I was a kid, and just the movies, Thrasher, Gleaming the Cube. Um, I don't know. It there wasn't a lot in terms of visibility, so you didn't see much. You know what I mean? Like occasionally, you could find a magazine or you'd see something on TV, or knew a kid that had a skateboard. Um, but yeah, it was just something that always just really excited me and something that I felt compelled to want to do and figure out more about. And it's like any other pastime when you're really young. um, you want to soak up more and more information and knowledge about it, and every last thing that I could possibly dig up was like, to me it was like mind blowing. It was just like peeling the onions off the layer, and each layer is just like a new bit of info, and yeah, and that just stayed with me through my early teenage years into to the point where I recognized, there was something really special happening in Philadelphia, and just kind of, uh, injecting myself into that scene there.
So when I was a kid, I was never really into skateboarding, I have to say. I have a lot of friends that were into it, and BMXing was a big thing as well when I was kind of growing up, just before I kind of hit my teenage years. But as a huge football fan or a soccer fan for most of our American listeners, I was out playing football at the weekend for 8, 9, 10 hours every day after
Mhm.
school and stuff like that. So I imagine is that what you were like with skateboarding? Just kind of whenever you could, you were out there doing it.
Man, and I had my mom did keep me involved with like the traditional sports, baseball, football, basketball, wrestling, like anything she could put me in. She tried to do, but I always felt, and I love those sports. I still love them to this day. Um, but for skating was the one thing that I always felt the most passionate about. And unfortunately, when I was as I got older and got into high school and was still playing other sports, felt the most conflicted about. Because it was it's not like you don't have traditional practice hours. It wasn't like, especially during that time period. You're talking mid to late '90s. It was still a very relatively underground thing. I mean, it was still like in terms of like the skate community, it was still our thing. So like your general public, your regular friends and family and coaches and teachers, it was still very misunderstood. And I still think it's misunderstood, which that's the beauty of it. But yeah, so back then it was definitely like, I was torn between stuff, things that every little Johnny you grow up with is playing, and like this other thing that I was really interested in.
And at what kind of point did you realize, oh shit, I'm quite good at this. I'm better than most people, and I could or I want to kind of make a living in some way from it?
I don't know if I ever had a point where I realized like I just knew. I think this was probably my senior year of high school. It was right then and there. I kind of had to have that discussion with my mom, where at that point I was like skating, like in this downtown scene, regularly, and on top of it, that scene was very, at the front of the skateboarding media, and everybody that was around it knew there was something very special happening, and I just had to have that conversation with my mom, like, look, I'll keep all my academics on a straight and narrow line, but in terms of anything else outside of that, like, I don't really want to do anything but skateboard. I think I had one or two moments, whether it was, tricks I had been able to film or shoot photos of, or appearances in a magazine or videos that, like, really, I think those kind of things were so big, because, you grow at this point, you grow up reading the magazines and then having the opportunity to actually be in one or be in a video. It was huge, especially when it's an industry that the majority of the mags and the gatekeepers are all on the West Coast. So, to be able to take something we were doing, um, on the other side of the country and see it show up, in these printed publications and stuff, I knew it was something that I wanted to strive for at that point, and I just knew that was kind of where my head was at. So.
And you mentioned there, obviously, a lot of it was very West Coast based, and
Mhm.
you ended up traveling out there a lot and eventually moving out there. Did you feel that was something you had to do to kind of further this dream or ambition that you had in any way?
Well, I think like any other community or industry, you kind of got to rub elbows with the people that are in it, and the when it would get cold in the winter in Philly, I would make it a point to go hang out, out over here, and to get comfortable and build a rapport with the people I was skating for, and and to just kind of you know, get out of my regular um, everyday hustle and bustle on the East Coast, and yeah, just another thing too is just like you when the mags are so conditioned to seeing these same these general spots, and let's say Los Angeles during that time period, it's like it's kind of I recognize it was kind of smart to then maybe go shoot some photos out there or film, so you can kind of show your community kind of like where you stood in terms of these what was being done at the time. So it was a little bit of it was a multiple factors that went into it, but I did recognize that it was like something I needed to do.
I wish I had a talent whereby I could take the winter off and move to somewhere like LA for a while.
Oh man.
Get away from these winters.
Yeah, it was tough too because I had to, a lot of, especially during those earlier years. That's when I first started my collegiate studies. So I would have to take, the process of like of taking off from school and then having to reapply and then financial aid, and it was definitely a process. And one thing I had always made the promise to my mom was like, regardless of how much time I took off, I was always going to make sure I would complete my studies. So it took me like 6 years to graduate, but I was able to do so. But it was definitely a process, and I would come stay for. I was like I had friends that would let me stay on their couch for like months at a time, and um, like especially now when I'm older, I'm like recognize like how jacked it was to be up in somebody's space for that long. And then at just a certain time, just getting homesick and shit. But it was that they were worth the sacrifices, and um, yeah, I've definitely made it a point to go back, especially as I got older, to go back and thank a lot of those people for allowing me to to just lay on their couch for so long. So
And during that period, like your mum was cool with you doing that. She was kind of supportive of the whole ambition of
yeah,
spending time out there and furthering things.
I think she could see that, I think she understood that that was where my head was at. And, I also think she saw that I wasn't just like fucking off, or just like, I wasn't just saying it to say it. You know what I mean? Like there, whether it was, magazines or, I had like a good older guys in my circle from around my way. And, there were easy things for her to check in on, to see that it wasn't just like me just being a shithead kid just gonna go float around Los Angeles. So yeah, she, as long as I stayed, she saw that the passion was there and I wasn't being a shithead. She was super supportive.
No social media back then where she could check in on you and see what
Nah,
shenanigans
it
you were up to.
was
Luckily,
nah, yeah, I think maybe this got to like the point of like early MySpace, but like and my mom just got like a Facebook within the past like year or so, so she definitely wasn't yeah, definitely wasn't checking in like that. But now she knows everything. Now she's like, because like Instagram will send your stories through to your Facebook, so she knows
yeah.
literally everything. And she'll be like, "Damn, she'll call me and ask me about things I couldn't believe she was aware of." So it's pretty cool.
I know that well. Being over 1,000 miles away from home myself, you forget these things you post resonate and get out to a lot of people dotted around the world, wherever they may be.
Yeah.
And I know my
Uh,
family are lurking on my pages. They may not follow me on certain places, but I know they
uh-huh.
they, they see certain things.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's the gift and the curse of social media.
Exactly. So if we skip forward a little bit from there and let's move on to kind of around the time the ice cream skate team starts to kind of come
Hmm.
together.
Yep.
So you kind of got into that through you knew Nino, who was
Yeah. Yep.
He was at Zoo York, wasn't he, at the time?
Nino was at New York. Yeah, Nino. I believe he went from Alien Workshop, which and Habitat and DNA, which was that was the company to be part of. During my generation, and they were all so involved in Philly. So Nino knew all the riders there, and he was a TM and brand manager. And then yeah, then he had went to New York, and if I'm not mistaken, that's where him and Pharrell had met. I think Pharrell had done a series of ads for Zoo, and yeah, he just started building out I think they had started building out the idea of the skate program from there, and yeah, it was just, it's crazy when I look back on how many, because the company had so many different moving parts. Not just like we're just going to put every element of this company under one roof. It was licensing deal through Reebok, um, but it was ran through Star Trek. Our paychecks came from Star Trek. Um, everything was kind of outsourced. Um, and meanwhile Nino was in LA. I remember even like when he was putting together our contracts. That was like a hurry up and wait thing over the course of, God, I forget however many months it was. We had like a conference call with Rob Walker, who was Pharrell's manager at the time, and then it was just like, man, when are these contracts gonna come? Because we
Hmm.
were all kind of like, I think all of us, were for the most part in between um, sponsors or deals or whatever. And so yeah, just kind of waiting for that contract to come so we could all get paid. And eventually it did come. But even during that time period, we were like waiting. They were in between. I think the the discontinuing of the boutiques to the board flips being introduced. So we were just kind of salvaging. I think they had a gang of the boutiques at the Star Trek office, and they would kind of send us a small allotment as they came. And we were skaters, so we were just burning through them. Um, but yeah, there's just, when I think back, there were so many moving parts that were very, that it was pretty impressive that Nino was able to navigate and put together. There was a lot of things Nino did for the whole program that were especially when I look back now as someone who runs a company and a brand, like just how unique of and skilled that was, that he was able to pull a lot of these things off. So
Yeah, and when he approached you about the idea of it, did they have the other guys involved already? Did you know those guys from the scene, as it were, at that time?
Yeah, I knew Terry. Me and Terry had gone back for some time. At that point, I had been, sponsored within the industry for probably 4 or 5 years. Same, Terry too. Kevin had come up to Philly occasionally. I didn't know Cato and I didn't know Jacob. But Jacob was, Terry was putting him through the Baker system. Um, so it was, yeah, we all, we all kind of, we all kind of hit it off relatively quick. I just think everyone was just so excited to be part of it too. That you weren't going to act like you were, a band of brothers out the gate. So,
And when all that kind of came together, part of it that intrigues me because I remember back then, I think I'm probably a couple of years older than you, maybe.
mhm.
And at that time, I was one of those big Neptunes fans, big BBC fans on the kind of different forums and traveling up to London for the latest BBC drops and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of talk on the forums about. I think a lot of fans knew Pharrell was a skateboard fan. He can skate
Mhm.
himself a bit, but there was a kind of certain amount of, I don't know if backlash is the right word, but a kind of looking down at the whole kind of thing in terms of, okay, he's a successful musician. He's kind of cashing
Mhm.
in on this kind of culture that maybe he doesn't know a lot about. Did
Yep.
you kind of get that from people? Was there any kind of, were there any kind
Oh
of
man.
side
Yeah.
eyes in the skateboarding community as well?
Yeah. Without 150% for sure. Yeah. I think there was a handful of things. Like I said, man, at that point, skating was still pretty low key and underground. It was still very much like this. It was the skaters community. You know what I mean? Like there wasn't very many outside players involved at that point. So and I think it was such a big thing. The fashion side of it was very unique, very unlike a lot of like skate was more skate fashion like as jiggy as it was still very separate from what was being ushered in with Bape and BBC and IceCream. Yeah, the name was pretty unique, IceCream. You know what I mean? So there was definitely a lot of things that I understood where the criticism was coming from, and for me personally, it was like all I could really do and be not passionate, but be focused on was bringing what I knew from this this core skate community and bringing my upbringing to it. And if some people fucked with it, cool. If they didn't fuck with it, then it kind of was what it was. Don't get me wrong. Like being that I'm from that community, there were times when the criticism was super hard to take. Um, but did it outweigh all the amazing upsides of it? Not even a chance. You know what I mean? Like not even a little bit. So it was easy to kind of for as bummed as you get for like a second, the upside of it was so rad that it was never anything to like keep your head down for more than like 15 seconds.
Definitely. And then as soon as you guys then got together and the whole thing took off, you guys were very much involved in the branding and the
Hmm.
marketing of
Yeah,
not just the footwear, but the whole kind of clothing line to a certain extent, and not
yeah,
just the ice cream. It also transitioned
yeah.
over to the BBC stuff with a lot of the lookbooks that you guys turned up in, and I remember back in the day, we would get no information on what the latest drops were going to be because we didn't really
Yeah.
have the internet as we have it now. But we
Yep.
would see you guys at promotional events in, I don't know, like a new striped polo or a new
Uh-huh.
pair of running dog jeans or something, and then we'd be like, "Oh shit, that's the next drop," and we were all looking towards you guys for what the kind of cues were in terms of what was coming out next.
Yeah.
Were you guys kind of aware of that
Man, you
Sort of
know
scrutiny you were getting from all the kind of fans and stuff as well?
what? Not necessarily. I don't think. I mean, 'cause, at least on the consumer side of it, I didn't. That wasn't really what struck a chord. Um, I think what really stood out for us internally was just like, I think you had just kind of touched on it without saying it, was just how consumed, I what it felt like to me, at least within like the within Star Trek and within, all things kind of, Pharrell at that time, like, we were the main focus for a long time, it seemed like. And there were times where maybe we were around artists that, were on the music side that, was kind of like, kind of give us that kind of like just stank eye, like, these guys, you know what I mean? Like,
I was going to say that Star Trek was a weird and wonderful place. I get the feeling
yeah, yeah,
so many great
yeah,
artists with so much potential, and some have gone on to great things. Most haven't, and probably could have. But then at the same time, yeah, you've got this kind of skate team which are taking a lot of attention
a
and
lot of attention, yeah.
appearing at award shows as well in music videos and
And I always looked at it like, like I genuinely loved, so many of the acts that they had on board there. So for me, it was just, I was just honored to even be mentioned with them. You know what I mean? So anytime we might have like felt something, it did kind of bum me out, because I was like, yo, one thing for sure is like music is what makes this whole thing go round. So like, I can never, I don't really ever want to impede on it. I don't ever want to perpetrate on that world, because I'm just here to promote skateboarding. So, but yeah, there were definitely times like particular artists, like, man, like verbatim, like, yo, you guys definitely soak up attention that like I would have liked for, my project or whatever. Not even naming any names, but for sure it was said, yeah. So.
I'm sure we can all imagine what some of those names were, but yeah, obviously once the brand and everything takes off and the skate team takes off, do you guys have any input as to kind of what it is you're actually wearing in terms of the
Nah,
wardrobe, or is it literally here's a box of our new things, wear them as you like, or
here there the thing going into it, that things were, with Nino coming from skate, and Terry and myself and the guys all being like core skaters. When we got into it, what was kind of pitched to us was, Nino had it framed as a very traditional skate brand, the way things would look, the ads, the videos. um I think the biggest thing was just kind of us all understanding the kind of the audibles to how things would be laid out and presented once we were in it. It was just because it very much was way bigger than like a skate project, you know what I mean? And like you said, like, like appearances on at like award shows, and we were just, I think we were doing stuff that, like, it was just outside of the box of, like, you're a traditional skate brand and how a traditional skate brand is presented. So, and yeah, I think we all did the best of our nature, the best of our ability to live within that. And there were definitely like, don't get me wrong, there were like big looks that were wacky looks that Nino shut down, that, like, thank God he did. You know what I mean? Because I think there were things that people were probably like, a lot of people probably would have said yes to, that like Nino knew, like, yeah, there's just certain things that like you just can't do, and like Nino was smart so that it didn't it didn't hang us.
having known all of the items that came out of BBC Ice Cream at that time, and some of them were a bit out there and
Mhm.
not outrageous, but they were certainly very different to everything else that was going on in kind of streetwear at the time. I don't imagine what some of these more outlandish things that we never saw were actually like.
Yeah, I mean, the clothing, there definitely was stuff where, like, it might have been like you said, man, a bit out there. I think the biggest thing was just, at least for me personally, is just figuring out ways to balance it out. Like, I was always like a dark Japanese salvage person back then, so it was like it was easy to mix maybe like a striped top or a printed top with, with some dark jeans and, you know, like I would find rather than getting like the multicolor Bapesta, I would find like the black suede one. You know what I mean? Like I definitely knew there was a time and place for like to be completely like Fruit Loop colored fits and I also think coming being in Philly too, as much as it was embraced in the city, I never wanted to be just OD with anything, but so it was just trying to find that balance of it. But yeah, for sure, there were definitely pieces where you like had to be very strategic on how you mixed and matched it. So
I think a lot of those items, especially the early ones, you had to have a certain amount of confidence to pull some of them off as well.
yeah, some of them you like. I saw somebody with the original that first the really deep train conductor type baseball cap. You know what I'm talking about? The
Yeah.
really really deep one. And there was no right or wrong way to rock that thing. I saw somebody wearing it the other day, and it made me reflect for a second. Like I tried every which way to like figure out how to could pull that off, and I never could. And that thing just sat in the bag at the crib. Uh, it was just yeah, that was such a unique shape, which to this day I don't know where they got that from or how they got it. I still think it's very cool. It's just like, it took a very, I don't know, particular head shape or type of
Yeah.
type of direction to pull it off. But yeah, for sure I know what you mean.
But and even the kind of less outlandish things, even like the sneakers, the ice creams,
Hmm.
there was nothing crazy about the silhouette, as it were. Like almost like a Stan Smith silhouette to a certain
Yep.
extent, with a
Yeah.
slightly fatter tongue almost. But the kind of prints were just so different because nobody else was really doing that at the time that
Nah.
they would just get attention no matter where you were. And I remember, when I used to wear them out on a night out or something, people would always be like, "What the are those?"
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even back then, I'd maybe wear a pink G-Shock and the OG striped polo shirt, the pink and the lime green one, and no one else was wearing that at the time. It would certainly turn heads, let's say.
Yeah. I would yeah, it's funny. I remember I worked at a store called Ubik when the boutiques had first come out. And I think that's probably when Pharrell was like really stepping out. He like so cuz yeah, he's in a hip hop community, but at this point he's stepping out into a look that is like so just outlandish for what, like the rap world knew at that point. And I remember when we got the shoes into Ubik, like, we were all sneakerheads and even us were like, yo, what, we don't know what the fuck this is. What I mean? But I think also too when when people are that far ahead of the curve, it takes time to it takes time for the masses to catch up, and they sat on the shelves for a while, and then I remember they started selling, and it was like, damn, what took so long for these to come around to people. But um, yeah, it was a cool idea, man. It was, I think it was very interesting. It was like, yeah, it was a very basic, clean silhouette with these print stories that, um, hadn't really had, as far as I can remember, hadn't been done like that. So yeah, they were interesting. The dollars and diamond signs, even some of the ones that never came out, whether it was the boom boxes or the the palm trees. Yeah, they were all pretty unique. So
I've seen a few interviews. You weren't actually a massive fan of the latter board flips
man,
that came out. You weren't a
I
fan of skating in those.
dude, I don't, I still to this day it blew me away that Terry and the rest of the guys were able to skate in it. I don't know what it was, man. I think in my head I was so I really liked skating in the boutiques, and I think in the back of my mind I had it made up what was to come was had to be in that vein. Um, so just like when they did finally present themselves, it was like so far from where my head was at, and yeah, it was just tough for me. And it wasn't even a part of the shoe necessarily. Like I think just for me personally, I was just like in a very weird space with skating. So I was in between board sponsors. So I was like, um, just I just wasn't. It was at a time period I just like I recognized I wasn't very comfortable on my skateboard. Um, so it's just like anything and everything in regards to skate during that time just was like it was took a toll and took a hit. So
You kind of felt you needed to be in your like your comfort zone
I
almost, with
just
the things
yeah
you
I just
liked
needed
and recognized, and
yeah. But those guys, it was every day like we would see new footage or new clips and you know, Terry'd be fakey tail sliding something or fakey crooksing or Kato be shredding something. So they had it. It was more so. When the second one came out, though, I remember being like, I just got juiced on skating again and was able to feel my board a lot better. And again, I might have been a different place in my life, a year or so later, and it just I felt comfortable again. I remember we were filming for the second video and I had a lot of footage in the second board flips. Skating just felt good again. So, but skating is all preference like that. You know what I mean? In terms of like the type of shoes you like to skate in, the type of board you like to skate, the shapes, the sizes, and unfortunately, we were, it wasn't like we had a range of silhouettes to choose from. We were just like that was the shoe as the colors would come out, um, that was what you had to pick from. And, honestly, just had to make the best of it. I think I did get some tricks in them that I felt that I was psyched on. But yeah, I just think for the most part of it, I was just my mind was made up for one thing, and then when it came out to be another thing, it was hard for me to navigate out of that. But
yeah. Even as a person that obviously doesn't skateboard here, I can get that. The boutiques, they're a nice leather. Once you wear them in, they're quite
mhm.
soft
Yeah,
and flexible. Whereas those board flips, at least the first board flips came out, and
yeah,
they're big and they're chunky, and there's a lot of padding in them. And like you say, some people do prefer that, and I still speak to a lot of people now that are still trying to buy up those board flip ones because
which
they like skating
that's
in them.
I tell you what, man, it's been pretty cool to me to see that the energy that's now being put into that shoe and seeing kids dig them up and finding them on eBay and it's just cool because it's like despite my shortcomings and being able to skate in it, um, it's still an indication and just a sign of what was going on with such a cool brand. So, here we are over 10 years later. And, it'd be interesting to see if Reebok's able to dig the mold and last back up for that and to put that shoe back out.
And I can't remember if I mentioned this on the last podcast, but I actually had somebody in the summer come to buy some, what was it, like an ice cream T-shirt or something off of me
Mhm.
from the vast collection that I never wear. And he saw a pair of IceCreams. I had the boutiques. I think they were, I can't remember which ones they were now. The Beeper ones maybe. And yeah, I think he's 17-year-old kid, big skateboarder.
Mhm.
He ended up buying a big pair of like baggy running dog jeans off of me, which were like over 10 years old, because he likes to skate in that kind of thing. Yeah, he dug into his pocket, gave me all his money for the boutiques basically, and I dead stocked them basically, maybe wore them out once or something in the last 15
Mhm.
years. And I was like,
Yep.
oh, so you're gonna dead stock these, you're gonna keep them, you're gonna put them on show, what you're doing. He was just like, nah, I've heard they're great to skate in. Here's all my money. I'm gonna go skate in them. And
Get out of here.
it's amazing to kind of see that. 15 years later, the kids
Yeah.
still hearing about them, still trying to track them down. He tracked me down through a pop-up store in the city. He was asking
Uh-huh.
around for ice creams, and someone that
Oh,
knows
that's
me
right.
was like, oh, we got a guy in Helsinki who's got a mad collection. Get in touch with him. And he hit me up, and now he's buying them off me, and he's off skating around Helsinki in them.
That's pretty cool, man. Yeah, that's all of these shoes are shoes, man. You know what I mean? Like it's it's I mean it's cool, but I think it's way cooler when their kids are able to utilize them for something. So to hear stuff like that is rad. Just dude, get them dirty, beat them up.
Yeah, there's part of me that cringes at the thought of it. Then there's part of me that thinks like that and is like, yeah, they're a pair of shoes. You need to be wearing them. You need to be. They're a functional item at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
yeah, for sure.
Not that I'm going to put mine on and skateboard in them or even walk across the road to the store, but
Exactly. Yeah.
someone else can do it. It's fine. As you're part of the skate team, and it starts kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Progressing, and you're doing all the marketing, all the um, promotional stuff as part of
Mhm.
the kind of team. When that deal with Reebok kind of starts to, well, one, it starts to run out, and then it starts to go a bit south, shall we say, in a polite way.
Yep.
Were you kind of aware of that happening in the background? Did that kind of
Mm,
affect any
Man,
decisions that you guys were making as a team?
there was, there were definitely like things. Well, I think too is like the, there were a lot of the design cues, obviously, that were part of it that were trends. You know what I mean? So, and things change, trends change. Um, and I think at least I could see that the brand was needing. Sorry, there's a train that runs right next door. The
That's all
brand was
right.
needing to make some pivots, and in the design side. Um, so I obviously saw that. And then we had heard like the Reebok deal which was a licensing deal. So they make, we give them, not we, but they give them the IP, the design IP, the name. Bong, they make the product, they sell it. You know, pay out, however. So we had heard that they were negotiating a new deal. In the meantime, I do think there were things that we could have done to, because we were basically employees. You know what I mean? So like to make, which I think we did a good job, but I also think there were certain things that, we probably, gave a hard time in places we didn't need to give a hard time, or, there were definitely things where we didn't give ourselves the best opportunity to win internally within the company. Um, so when shit did hit the fan, and I think Nino had spent some time trying to help find a new footwear partner, and as things progressed and that partnership wasn't popping up, um, at that point, they had to make the decision to let us all go, and I think I understood. It's like, what are they? They could keep coming out of pocket to pay us, but for what? If they don't have shoes, if shoes aren't being sold, it's like it doesn't take it does. You don't have to be a business genius to see that this isn't like in the best interest of the company. So
I think one of the other big problems they had as well was obviously with the ice cream side of things. That was meant to be, the plan was to make that the more athletic, casual wear. And they obviously had that tentative deal with Reebok, which wasn't finalised, which would say Reebok would manufacture the
yeah, yeah,
t-shirts, the
yep,
clothing, and everything else, all the apparel around it as well. And obviously that was
yeah.
tied into that sneaker deal as well. So it wasn't just the fact that the sneaker deal kind of went off. The whole thing starts to crumble apart.
That's what I mean. Where it was like, Bape was making the clothing. The New York guys at the showroom were selling it. There was ice cream. It was BBC. Which is which? The shoes are over here. So that's what I mean. There was a lot of moving parts that aren't necessarily, um, it's very untraditional. It was a very untraditional business model in terms of like the footwear and clothing space, and I do think it was impressive that it was able to work the way it did during that time period, and I also think, um, I think all of that energy that was created then, was very instrumental in the foundation of why um, the brands still exist today, and you still see ice cream being sold and BBC being sold and be performing well in these stores, whether it's the same quality or design ideas as that early era. It was all part of why it's still around today. And, but it's pretty interesting, man. I mean, because these clothing companies and shoe companies, like they all go through waves and spurts, and what they might have one era that means something to maybe somebody like you and I, whereas like a younger kid, it could have a totally different feeling with him, and he or she might, maybe what we grew up on is what influenced them, maybe not. It's just like, I think it's all interesting in the bigger picture of how these companies operate and are able to exist.
Yeah, and it's been I guess, a kind of almost wild ride for the ice cream brand itself over the years.
Yeah.
As we kind of mentioned, it has its peaks and its troughs, and I think we saw up until 2 years ago, it was once they kind of got control of the brand back, they didn't really know what to do with ice cream, and we saw all the stores
Yep.
basically get rid of all their ice cream stock, and there was no new ice cream designs for a year and a half, maybe. I want to say 2 years nearly.
Yeah. Yep. Because yeah, they not to cut you off, Steve,
Mm.
but yeah, they went through the Iconics period,
Yep.
and then different partnerships. But that I think that's all. I think it's all relative in terms of just how these companies are able to stay afloat, and but like I said, man, I do think if it could be, I'm just talking out loud, it could have been completely mismanaged or whatever, but the fact that we're sitting here on you know November 7th, 2019, and they're both being sold on shelves is like pretty amazing.
Yeah, and I for one, I'm loving seeing a lot of this new ice cream stuff come back with the throwbacks to some of the classics that we remember from when the first kind of few seasons.
Yep.
Also incorporating some of the new designs as well. It is a bit of I guess, a contentious issue amongst a lot of I think the older fans out there and the collectors.
I think this is probably a perfect time to segue into the newer stuff.
You do my job better than I do.
Yeah. Well, it's just it's interesting because um I started, obviously that conversation has been going on forever for people from me like you. I'd love to have the old stuff back. Whoop de whoop. Oh, this sucks. They did this. This doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
All of those those um those peaks and lows of like that a pivotal point in the brand where you would like to see it again. So I started working with Reebok in this was beginning of the year, and at some point during that time period, some of the folks at Reebok um, had mentioned to me that they had some stuff going on with the original DNA, and I had, but each person I spoke to or that had brought it up to me was like a different understanding. You know what I mean? So like one person would say it was one thing, another person would say it was another thing. They were probably all right. I was probably translating it wrong, but so when it came down to it, the first thing that I had heard was the Iverson idea. Not necessarily the boutiques, which to me that was really really cool because I was like, what? Never in my last day would I ever imagined these two worlds being put together. And then when I did see the original mock-ups, um, like the ice cream guy being in the hologram part of the five, and the ice cream man with the braids and the headband. For me personally, I thought it was genius. I thought it was super cool, and the fact that it was that board flip colorway, I thought was really unique. But then there was also part of the conversation from some of these individuals was like you said, the original, the prints, the diamonds and dollar signs, um, which once it all played out, then you saw them on different silhouettes. So I understood where your purist BBC and ice cream supporter, um, if there was let down just because we have in our mind made up what we'd like to see, and then when we get it, it's like a different interpretation of it. Um, but at least for me, I thought it was all really unique. The yellow, the lemonade colorway on God, what's the name of that silhouette? The BX. Hold on, let me look it up right now.
I'm awful with the specific names as well. Yeah.
Yeah, 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 for sure. But I thought it was cool how they did touch on these different colorways and just different stories. So it kind of took you, when I looked at it, it took me kind of down this nostalgic road of like different, yeah, the BB 4600. Um, it just took me down like a different lane. You know what I mean? Like down a different, like through my own mentors, like the board flip colorway on the Iverson, the lemonade. Then you took some of the boutique and put it on the high top. Um, so it gave me a good feeling. And then the runners, with the constellation print and the other one. It's funny, those other two prints don't hit home with me. The one that on the I really like the shoe, but I think maybe those two prints were during the later times in the brands, and it doesn't resonate with me the same way that some of the other stuff did.
It's really weird because when I saw some of the mock-ups maybe a year ago or something now, and I saw the Starfield one, the darker blue one. That's what I'm a sucker for anything that's got that Starfield print on it. So that I was like, actually, I don't mind that. And then they obviously had the space camo one, the greener version, which I'm kind of a fan of that print as well. So those I kind of quite like.
I mean, when I see them, they're authentically and part of the real DNA of IceCream and BBC. And I think they're cool. Like I'm looking at, I have the shoes in my house, and I've obviously worn the one with the green outsole. I haven't worn the Starfield one yet. But when I look at them now in person, it's like I think it's a pretty. I mean, I like the Zig as is as a regular shoe. But I kind of had to see it in person to and kind of see it on foot too. I think maybe the biggest shortcoming in just how they were presented was maybe just like, I think had they shown them on foot, it would have just the narrative from like that OG fan would be a little bit different. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm speaking as a 37-year-old dude who this is all very special to me, and but
that's the thing. I'm 37. I'm an old fan as well, and I kind of see it slightly differently as well. Because I sort of speak to a lot of these kind of collectors on a almost sort of daily basis, and I think one thing that the problem we have every year, every 6 months, whatever it is, whenever there's a drop, when there's a brand that's kind of iconic in streetwear such as this and in footwear and stuff, they're never going to be able to win because we saw the teasers, which was the OG box.
I thought the box was incredible,
which everyone loves. So everyone was talking about
the little shoehorn with how it came in the same packaging as the boutiques. I thought that was super cool.
Yeah, but we've got all the fans out there, kind of 50% hyped for some kind of boutique sort of shoe, but then a week later, the same people saying, I'll disown this brand if they ever re-release a boutique. And then switching from week to week, and I'd be a hypocrite to say
the brands can't win, and the fan and the supporter and the consumer isn't right, but they're not wrong.
Yeah, it depends who you ask out there. Yes, because like I'll be perfectly honest, I probably need to see them in person, but from what I've seen so far, I'm not a massive fan, and I've never been a big fan of some of those silhouettes anyway, especially the big kind of chunky basketball silhouettes like the Iverson. But I'm a 37-year-old man, and when I walk around the city, going, what the fuck are these kids wearing on their feet? Because the fashion now is these big chunky feelers and which come from the Balenciagas and all this kind of stuff. So I think there's a lot of us out there a lot of us collectors and old fans that have to remember that we're 37. Like we might have the money to buy these things now, but they're not necessarily aimed at us. They are aimed at the younger people going to the likes of Complex Con and spending the weekend there. And
I think what also too gets lost, and maybe the majority of folks aren't privy to that information, but like you know, who knows where the factory and the molding and the designers that had the art files. There's a lot of parts. You're talking, how many years are removed are we from the original production run? Lord knows where they were made at. You know what I mean? So like, the if they don't have that molding anymore to make that shoe, they're probably needing. That's an expensive investment for
Mm.
any company. You know what I mean? To then go back in and recreate that, and then they'll probably have to start at making 20,000 of them. Like those are the things that kind of get overlooked. Whether it's Reebok or an independent footwear brand, it's like,
I don't think there's any brand out there at the moment that would want to, because from conversations I've had with people there and around, they don't have those moldings anymore, so they would have
no,
to
yeah.
go back to scratch. And
That's like 70. That's probably 70 gates out the door just to get the you know what I mean, to get that
yeah,
process started. Like,
and to do that, and then to, if you want to stay true to the boutique, you'd have to do it in a real limited run, which then isn't cost effective.
yeah,
So yeah, you've got to be then pushing big numbers, and yeah, that's a big investment to kind of produce them themselves. And
yeah,
it's yeah, I think we kind of forget about all that sort of happens in the background
yeah,
as well.
yeah. But and I do, having spoken to the design team at Reebok, they those the men and women that were putting this together, like, I thought it was really cool. They did all their due diligence, in terms of the patterns and the colors, and some I saw one, Joe had the BB, but in, I think, one of the collect colorways, the silver with the maroon. um so they had gone through this whole, that was a collect colorway, right? The super bright silver one
They had the silver. It
with
was
the red.
yeah, it was a busy workshop exclusive. Yeah,
Okay, yeah, yeah. So they did that. They did, the neon green with the yellow, the brown with the pink.
yeah.
So they did kind of go through the whole vast range of original, design DNA, and try to figure out how to reinterpret it, which I thought was really cool. But like you said, man, I understood. I understood where people could get. They might not be 100% with it. I will say this, from being from being on the inside, and then, we're now sitting here in 2019. I thought everyone at Reebok, I honestly thought they did an amazing job in catching that, that original DNA, and presenting it, over the weekend, and for the remainder of the product that comes out in, what, February,
Yeah,
I
potentially. Yeah,
believe.
yeah, and that's really good. That's really good to hear. Because like from my perspective, I've heard kind of background stories over the last year and a half that Reebok didn't want to do it, and obviously there were issues from 15 years ago still bubbling under the surface now.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, it's been
It's good to hear that, like, the people that were invested in the team and that were working on them were actually
mhm.
loyal to a lot of, like you say, the DNA of the
Yeah.
sneakers themselves.
What was cool, and this was another thing was massive, was the gentleman I was working with, John Carley. We had got together. They had got together. They had got into town to start setting up Complex Con Thursday. I was psyched because he had called me about a week prior to, and asked if I could help get involved, which, obviously accepted the invitation. So he said, Friday, can we get together and shoot some stuff of you in the shoes, styled however you want. And immediately I called up Nino, who, Nino's kind of one of these guys that exists. He obviously has an Instagram, but
He's
his
behind the
business,
scenes.
yeah, he still exists offline.
Yeah.
So to able, I gave him a shout, and he agreed to come out and shoot some photos. And um, I think John was psyched.
I gotta say, his
Because,
pictures were great when I saw them. I was like, that's a great kind of throwback
yeah,
to
yeah,
that. Yeah.
he's one of these guys too. Is like, I've been very fortunate, man, over the past, 11 or so years. Um, this comes up, it still comes up in conversation. It's still something that people are very psyched on. Um, And Nino, I would be wrong if I didn't embrace that. Nino is not, he's a bit more in the background. So like, it was cool for him to then kind of step out, and at least for me to be like, yo, this is the guy that put it together with Pharrell. And it opened many a doors, I mean, for especially for me. So to be able to you know to say to my little community, like, this is actually the guy, that was really cool. And then I had actually bet, I was going to ask him to come to Complex Con, but he's so not that's so not his forte. And yeah, running into Pharrell Saturday was super cool, and I wish Nino was there. There was actually a couple people I wish were there. Mick, who was Pharrell's assistant for super long. Philip, who worked, alongside Loic. And I did see Loic for a moment, which was really cool. Um, so yeah, it would have been super cool to have, like, a lot of the guys from back then. Obviously, some people are working for different companies now, different projects, and they're all over the fucking world. But it would have been rad to kind of have everyone there for that one moment.
An old Star Trek ice cream reunion.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because it really was a special thing, man. It's not, when I look at like all of the things in fashion and pop culture and music and skating, it was such a unique experience, man. And it changed my life, and which is why I've always, um, I will always express my gratitude. And to rep the brand regardless of its changes or anything, or whatever it navigates through. Like, it'll always be part of me, and I'll always have its back on the flip side of things.
And that kind of segues quite nicely into what was going to be my sort of final question around the ice cream stuff.
Hmm.
What was your biggest takeaway from being on that skate team for those years and working with obviously the other guys on the team, but the likes of Nino and Pharrell and all the kind of people around there? What was like? Was there a key takeaway? Was there a key piece of advice that you still kind of go by nowadays or anything?
Man, it was this was like, the coming from like a core skate community prior to, um when Nino had actually first asked me, I think I had respectfully declined, because I was coming from such a school, this small community that you're not necessarily like willing to embrace anything outside of what we knew. um Things changed, and I had was going through some different stuff. And I was like, you know what, this is actually an amazing opportunity to be part of. So circle back, ask if the invitation was still there, and he said, yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. And then as it progressed, um seeing the things it was allowing me to be part of, which were things a kid from Norristown, Pennsylvania, I would have never saw. I would have never places I would have never been, people around people I would have never been around. Um, which also in terms of like occupational opportunities, and like there definitely were like conversations like, um, I remember vividly. I was staying in Miami at the time. I went to go hang out with Pharrell. He was recording at the Marlin. He took a break. We were just took a walk and chatting it up. And specifically him being like, "Yo, Jimmy, I don't like, you think, like, I'm not just gonna do Super Thug. Like, I'm gonna do stuff with Madonna. You know what I mean? But my hip hop audience might not understand me going to record with these other genres. And I think that's applicable for you." And I didn't know what the fuck he was talking about. You know what I mean? Like, he was like, think about if you skated vert. And I was just like, what? I just didn't get it. You know what I mean? Until other things like, being able to go work for Disney, or be in different fashion communities. Um, until I got a little bit older and a little bit wiser, um, just kind of understanding how valuable that little piece of information was. And And I told him that the other day. You know what I mean? Like when we ran into each other. Um, and I also told him like, look, it's been. He was like, damn, because he had said like, yo, I seen the DC shoe you had just put out. I see everything you're doing, Jimmy, and I told him like straight up, this all comes from, you know, I just trying to keep the momentum going from when we closed the door in May to '08. I gave myself a couple months to figure my shit out, and just tried to press on with everything that had learned and seen and been able to be part of during that to bring it to where we are today. So yeah, that was definitely probably the most vital piece of information, and in terms of yeah, just guidance and yeah, just what I got the most out of it.
And I think that's great, and it kind of it says a lot, not just about Pharrell, but about you and your work. That even all these years later, he's still got his eye on these kind of collaborations that you're working on and bits of clothing and footwear that you're putting out, and he can kind of say that to you.
Yeah, it was cool. I was in New York last week, and I was or the following week, I was in an Uber and just kind of scrolling through my Instagram, and it said Pharrell. It was like Pharrell had like 3 or 4 photos, and for a glance, I thought it was just like a fan page or whatever, and then I was like, damn, that's pretty far down the feed, like
Yeah.
like he checked it out, and literally, I don't think I hadn't seen him since me and my lady ran into him in Miami in 2012. Um, so 7 years, and you never know. Like maybe that was something. He could have. I'm cool on that. Move forward. A lot can happen to people and their judgment and mindset towards things in 7 years. Um, but to see like when he walked into the booth, he came right up and hugged and caught up for a minute, like everything was all good, and that was super cool. You know what I mean? And a lot of people within the next couple of days, I had reached out to me and were like, it was just a pretty unique moment, and for it to all be in the Reebok realm, which that was kind of where everything started for the brand, was all pretty cool.
Almost come full circle all these years later.
Shit is weird, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Things are super weird. The world works and the universe aligns in mysterious ways, man. So
It does, and it all works out eventually. Like you say, if you take that advice, you take your chances, you work hard, you do what you got to do, you always end up in a good place again, no matter what.
yeah, yep, yeah, for sure, and yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. I remember when it came to a close and like trying to figure out what's gonna be the next thing in my life, and like for it, that was a crazy thing to come off of. You know what I mean? Like it was such a rad thing, but it was like super high, and then when it's gone, it's gone. You gotta, how do it's up to you to then figure out how do you build the momentum in whatever you're doing, what work or creative. If
But then you
if
you
you,
certainly did. You kind of pivoted and went into TV work essentially, as you mentioned a minute ago. Working for Disney.
that was yeah, that was, and that literally we had a TV deal with MTV for a show for Ice Cream. Shot the pilot, but it was through Dick House. Dick House did, Jackass
Jeff
and Rob
Tremaine, isn't
Show.
it?
Yeah, Jeff.
Yeah.
And I've known Jeff from Big Brother days, and Jeff was just like, yo, I have some friends that are working on the TV show. Jimmy, can you go meet them? And sure enough, a little coffee on like a Sunday morning turns into 3 years worth of work for a massive television network. So yeah, that's never say no to any meeting, man. Because
Mm.
honestly, as goofy as it might sound, you never know what could come out of it.
And was that 3 years of good work that you enjoyed?
Oh, it was incredible. Yeah, it was amazing. It wasn't the people that I had met working for it were amazing. The experience and education I got out of it was amazing. Um, it was during when the U.S. economy was in a really bad place, so I was able. You know it was a time where I was able to put a lot of bread in people's pocket, and that was always a good feeling. Not money that the money's not obviously not everything, but to be able to help people live a little bit more comfortable is a good feeling. So, um, yeah, put money in the skate shop that was close by, and it's definitely like a very unique experience, and I don't think how do you replicate that, like because it was yeah it was definitely one of a kind, but a rad experience nonetheless.
And then when that project finished, did you continue to look at that industry, or is that when you kind of decided, right, okay, now
Nah,
now I'll start going into
nah, yeah,
the fashion and
it was honestly I knew that there was nothing like it out there, and there probably would be nothing like it ever again, and that we wrapped in May and of 2011, and I found out within a couple of weeks I was having my daughter, so it was just life. Yeah, I knew life was then it had a different focus right then and there.
that's when shit changes for sure. Yes,
Yeah,
I know the feeling.
uh, but shit, I think yeah, this was a rad chat, Steve. I know you obviously followed the course of everything over the years, and as have I, in and out, and yeah, it just seems like this was a good moment for the brand, through and through. I know I talked to some of the BBC people. They were psyched. The Reebok people were psyched, and I think I think to me, when I look at it, it's like this was a moment maybe even the brand needed for a long time. So
Yeah, definitely. I think the ice cream side of things definitely needed something. I wouldn't have maybe said it was this, but then I like to be proved wrong, and
yeah,
you know
yep.
I've spoken to some of the BBC guys as well, and they said obviously all the sneakers sold out. They had a lot of interest. We're hopefully going to see some more work dropping, like you said, maybe early next year.
Hmm.
So it'll be really interesting to see what they do going forward with the brand, with the collaborations, because ice cream's turning into. When I look at the US side of things, at least ice cream is doing the more interesting stuff as opposed to the BBC side. You look at
Mm.
the stuff Matthew did with the Made in Italy stuff a
Yeah.
couple of years back now, which I personally actually quite liked, despite all the people out there that complained about it. And then the
More, more,
Palm
more,
Angels
more
collaboration.
complaints, right?
Was it? Sorry.
I said more complaints, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. As soon as it dropped, everyone was like, "This isn't a boutique, and this isn't this, and this." Yeah. And it's. And I had the chat with Matthew, and we had to actually we had to pull the interview down in the end, so a few people heard it. But hopefully we'll have him on again soon, because I know he's working on lots of stuff as well, and he was involved in the recent Palm Angels collaboration, which
Yeah.
surprisingly, Pharrell showed up for and repped a little bit as well, which was a real big surprise to everybody, I think.
Yeah.
So it's good to see ice cream kind of back on the map, doing some new and interesting stuff. We might not, all of us old heads might not like all of it, but we got to
Nah.
remember
Yeah.
it's not for us all the time,
Nah.
and
Yeah.
it's just good
Things
to see it
evolve.
doing well.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, man, because I still like the segmentation of the brands to me is like I think maybe day one in my mind I threw it out. You know what I mean? They're still just like it's still just like one thing,
Yeah.
like but obviously it's very different between BBC and ice cream and yeah, yeah. I always it's funny I somehow some way the world aligned where like Ross and the guys from the EU team. I talk to Mims a lot, but Ross is like become like a massive family friend. So it's like I'm always
I see you guys hanging out quite a lot whenever he's over there and stuff, and that's
yeah,
really great to see. I got a lot of time for Ross. He's helped me out a lot in the past with getting hold of bits and pieces. So yeah, shout out
yo
to Ross and to Joe and everyone else at EU.
yo really Ross is amazing, man. Like Ross is such a good designer, um, a very good technical designer, a very good just overall in terms of brand management, a creative outlook and vision and follow through. Um, so it's funny, man. Whenever I'm over there and and I get to see the line plans and look through the stuff at the showroom, it's always very energizing to me. It's always like, I sometimes I forget the thing when I see the collections that he puts together. Sometimes I forget the brand has ever had any hiccups because I'm like, when I, it's a massive showroom with like a full outerwear section, a full denim section. It's all merged color wise. The print stories are all cohesive, and yeah, sometimes I trip, man. I'm always like, well, what's the fucking problem? You know what I mean? Like, like, what do you mean there has ever any hiccup in any of the business side? Because they do such, he does such a good job of what he curates. So yeah, Ross is the fucking man. Craig's the man. But Ross, and just in terms of like family ties, man, he's definitely like um, he's our extended UK brother. So
You need to give him that little nudge and get him on here because I know he's promised. Well, not promised, but he's tentatively said he might at some point. So
he's such a him too, man. These guys they're so shy and they're so talented, and the world just wants to get a glimpse of the things that are going on in their minds. So yeah, it's just hopefully it takes somebody like me to just give him a little shove to put him out there.
yeah, definitely. Now we've name dropped him. I'll message him later and tell him he has to.
Yeah, he don't have any, and he has no option now but to do so. So, but
All right,
shit.
man. I don't want to keep you too much longer. Let's just very, very quickly touch on the million and one things you constantly seem to be working on.
Hmm.
You're a master of many trades, JSP and No One and the different
Yep.
collaborations you're doing. Here's a question for you. If you had
Yep.
to give yourself a single job title that
Uh
covers the range of things that you work on at the moment, what would that be?
huh. It would be a utility. I'd be like the utility guy.
Okay.
Like, if I can help in all the different departments, man. And honestly, that's something I've absorbed from the beginning. Like when I said like I used to go visit the skate companies I worked for. I would roam around. The first company I skated for was called Aesthetics, and I would go sit with the salespeople and sit with the designers and hang out in the warehouse and just kind of see what everyone was doing, and it didn't take very much for me to put it all together. Not that I'm not a designer, to say it the least. Like I know what I like, and I'm able to find people that are able to help me bring those ideas to light. um, but in terms of understanding the significance and role that each person plays within a brand. You know what I mean? Like, for the most part, a lot of these companies, they might have a face to it or a name, but there's a team of people that do significant things to help the bigger picture of it. And, that's just something I had always absorbed and just carried with me. Like if I do the things that I can manage within, and then, obviously I can't cut sweatpants. I can't, grade patterns. Um, we've got a young lady here that fulfills each and every order and is incredible at customer service. Um, so it's also just understanding to find the right people to put into place in all of these positions that are very necessary. So
But that's what I like about the stuff that you do. As I mentioned, you do a lot of stuff, or you seem to do a lot of stuff, but you're not just being involved in stuff for the sake of being involved and just throwing shit out there. You can see that you've done your homework, whether you're putting out a basic looking tee, which
Mhm.
isn't just a basic tee, or whether you're putting out a pair of tie-dye sweatpants and a hoodie,
Yeah,
or you're making a bespoke pair of sneakers for somebody. You can see that you've done the homework in every aspect, and like you say,
yeah.
a lot of that comes down to pulling in the right people, but that's how any kind of successful business and business person works. So it's really great to see you doing that.
Thank you so much. I will say, man, I've been very fortunate and very blessed, and I'm very thankful to have been able to work for brands that it's not just a job. I'm not just showing up for the sake of a paycheck. It's all things that I wear and that I like and that I'm into, and that I think that alone makes your day. You've got a leg up on a lot of the people that they might just be showing up to design for a company they don't really like, or ask to market some shit that's like they probably don't fuck with. So I've been lucky, man. So I know, and I know it's the shit could, you know, and I have had times where I've had to go do some shit where it's just a check and it doesn't feel good, and I never want to be in that position ever again. So it's just, you know, like, let me do what I can do in the meantime to assure that that's, you know, I'm able to wake up and look forward to wherever I have to go.
Definitely. What are the various things you're kind of working on at the moment? Get your plugs in there now.
Oh man, just right. Yeah, just really JSP and Standard Issue, which are all under the same facility, under the same roof, same teams. Help put both, you know, make both ideas a reality. Same ecom. So that, you know, that's this has been my it's weird, man. I was introduced to the gentleman that has overseen the operation in 2013, and we worked together for a couple years, and then stopped working together for a couple years, and then reconnected in mid to late 2017, and obviously, and honestly, it feels like I never left, man, because we just kind of, I think both of ours strengths kind of complement one another, and yeah, we're lucky to have a really good crew of people that are all employed under this roof that, you know, all work together well. So just a good vibe, a good energy in the building.
It's definitely one of the most important things,
Yeah,
especially in
yeah.
a creative kind of space as well.
Nah, yeah, we don't try to, and I don't think anyone tries to do too much or they don't do too little. I think we understand what our where our roof is at and our cap is at, and just try to figure out how we can be the best of each of us within, you know, what we have, and just to continue to grow from there.
And have you got anything specific that you're working on now that we'll see coming out soon? Any specific pieces or collaborations that might be in the works or anything?
We man, you know, I just wrapped up this DC project with Josh Kalis, which was amazing, and another one of these things that was something that went back to my childhood, and to be able, you know, for the fact that Josh is still going as strong as he is, and the product demanded this retro release, and, you know, to be able to help bring that to light was an honor. You know, we just, for the remainder of the year, we just have a handful of like inline things that we worked on, and we got some cool things for 2020 though. So, you know,
Looking forward to it.
the end of this year is going to creep up quick. It'll get quiet, and then, you know, hopefully, after New Year's, we'll be able to keep building on everything that you know, we were fortunate to do. Yeah, 2019. So.
And just to kind of round that off and close up here, out of all the stuff you've worked on, so the skate team, all the various skating things around that as well, the TV work, the fashion and footwear you're doing at the moment, is there a specific piece or a specific collaboration that you're most proud of?
Um, that I'm most proud of. God, man, you know, there's definitely a lot that you know, have been, you know, to be able to do the Reebok thing in June was amazing. Um, you know, I mean, one thing that will always kind of stand out was working with No One, and being able to do Markel Fultz's shoe for the draft. That was such a unique thing. You know, being able, we did a collection with Lapstone and Hammer in Philadelphia, which is a really beautiful boutique. Has an amazing owner named Brian Nadav, and um, you know, sitting there and seeing Brian sending me photos of Ben Simmons wearing the stuff, and being able to go back there, and just so many of my like friends and family and skaters, that people that still inspired me to this day, you know, coming out for like the release party was, you know, milestone for me. Um, but yeah, I guess they all kind of, you know, they all served their own, you know, particular significance in my life, and I think all of it, man, it's all, you know, just really lucky to be able to do any of this. You know, it's like we could have, like, you know, I have friends that are fucking union welders and painters, and those guys have real tough jobs, and are up in the elements doing real hard shit, and they're like, yo, Jimmy, don't take any of this shit for granted. You could be up here with this fucking harness on
Yeah.
in 30, you know what I mean, in 30-degree weather. So, I just try to just enjoy it, and hopefully shit that my daughter is psyched on, and there are things that she can look at too, maybe now or maybe in 10, 20 years, and be proud of. But yeah, just they all kind of hit home for me.
And I'm sure there's many more to come as well in the coming months and years and
I
decades
hope
and
so.
everything
Yeah,
else.
yeah. Just try to build on, as we're like midway through one project, we're always focusing on the next, three or four. So you just kind of build off of trying to enjoy and appreciate what we got at the moment, and at the same time understand what we have to do in the future. So
All right, well, I think we'll wrap it up there. I don't want to keep you too long.
thank you, Steve.
We've already run really, really long.
Cool.
So, yeah, we'll call it a day there. Where can people find you online if they want to follow you and see what you're up to and stuff like that?
Oh man, in the same place the rest of the world is at on Instagram. I just Jimmy Gorecki and JSP and Standard Issue Tees
Nice one. I'll put links in the show notes to yourself and all of
for
the
sure.
various brands and stuff like that, and we'll make sure that's covered.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Steve. I appreciate you having me. I know it's late there. I'll let you get some sleep and get the heater on because it's freezing.
It is that. It is late and it is cold. But no, thank you, Jimmy, man. Really appreciate it. Like I say, a lot of people have been asking me to try and get you on here for quite some time. And I know we've had messages back and forth for quite a while, but we got there eventually.
Yeah,
And yeah, it was great to hear from you and great to kind of hear these stories direct from you as well, direct from the horse's mouth, as it were.
thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I do hope, man. I like I said, man, the original. We all come from that original um, graduation class of IceCream at BBC. And like I said, man, I will. This was the closest that I've ever seen, and being there felt to that early aura of the brand. So I do hope people are able to see what I saw and felt, and yeah. So come February when the stuff releases to the Iverson is my favorite, man. So we'll leave it at that.
I need to take a closer look at all of this and yeah, try and see some in person perhaps and get my head around some of it. But no, it's
Sure,
really
yeah.
really great to hear. And like I say, thank you
Cool.
so much for sharing all this with us, man. We really appreciate it.
You got it, Steve. Enjoy your night. All right.
Thank you, man. Take it easy.
Bye. Go.
Hey everyone, so that was my chat with Jimmy Gorecki originally from the IceCream skate team. You can follow him on Instagram at Jimmy Gorecki, and I'll put links in the show notes to that and all of his other places where you can see what he's up to. As this podcast has gone quite long, there is a lot of other news to get through, but I think we'll leave that to the next show. Just very quickly, the kind of last few months we've had some stuff such as the IceCream Swarovski items, which were re-released from Japan. We've had, as we mentioned earlier, the Palm Angels ice cream collaboration. We've had the Adidas Hue Now Is Her Time pack and the Proud NMDs. We've had the Human Made Human Race collaboration. We've seen sneak peeks of the Adidas 4D model, which Pharrell is supposedly working on. Pharrell has released a Saki Storm Cowboy with Nigo. He's won the X Prize for 2019. There was also the recent Rick Rubin GQ interview, which I think we'll touch upon a bit more in a future podcast episode, as well as a new promotional campaign for Beats Solo headphones with a number of matte color finishes, which Pharrell is promoting. And also the new Kanye album and a Clips reunion on one of the tracks. Again, I think we'll touch upon that a little bit more in a coming episode. Stuff to look forward to. Well, one thing that's just gone, as we mentioned, Complex Con for this year. Again, some more information coming out of that in the near future. Something in the water for 2020 has been announced from this time the 20th to the 26th of April. So a week-long festival in Virginia Beach this time. And we also saw the reissue of In Search Of. We saw the reissue and then we quickly saw the cancellation from Universal Records. My pre-order was cancelled, I think 4 or 5 weeks before it was due to ship. I think it was meant to ship at the end of November or start of December, and it was cancelled a few weeks ago. That's been cancelled. From what I hear from people, they are actually looking at maybe reworking this and tying it into the 20th anniversary, which is not too far away. But aside from that, it looks like Polydor, who were, I believe, the UK distributor for Universal, are looking at doing their own reissue. So we may see a Polydor version coming out at some point soon. But if and when that happens, we'll probably mention it on the podcast or we'll post something on Instagram. So keep your eyes peeled. Other than that, you can check out a recent interview with myself for 5pm magazine, a magazine and kind of pop-up store that we have here in Finland. I'll post a link to that in the show notes where I talk about getting into the Neptune's N.E.R.D, collecting BBC IceCream and all these kinds of things. And also we are doing a Something in the Water giveaway where you can win t-shirts from last year's Something in the Water Festival. You can head over to the Facebook page to get details. I will hopefully try and post details on Instagram in the coming days once I get this podcast edited, so you will hopefully have seen something by the time you listen to this. But if not, head over to the Otherz podcast Facebook page to check out the details of how you can win there. But in the meantime, I will leave it there. We will hopefully be back soon. I will not leave it months and months until the next podcast. We will hopefully be back in a week or two with another guest to talk about all the news from the summer and a new track, hopefully, or an old track, but a new one to talk about. And bring you all the latest news and information and things that are going on in the world of the Neptune's N.E.R.D, BBC IceCream and all of that stuff. But until then, that is it from me. You can find me at Steve R. Penny on Instagram and Twitter and all those places. You can find the podcast at Otherz Podcast on Instagram. And if you want to check out the website and all of the old podcast episodes and show notes and all that kind of stuff, head over to the otherz.net, Otherz with a Z. And until next time, goodbye.